What's up, YouTube, and welcome back. I am so excited to announce that the new arena is out on the PvE and coming to live servers next week. I have been waiting for PvE to get close so I could start making videos again. Regular League videos are just not for me, but today I have something really special for you guys. I did a interview with Riot Madness Hero, who is one of the lead developers on Arena. He does balance changes on Arena, augments, he does everything. He's the GOAT. And so I'm just going to throw on a little bit of gameplay of the new Arena mode in PvE and let you guys listen to that. If you got any questions for him, go ahead and ask in the comments below, and I'll either answer it there, or maybe we can even make a second video. Thank you guys so much, and have a good day.
Cool. I'm Madness Hero. I've been the person primarily responsible for balance of Arena for the first two releases. I also did almost all the augment designs for the first release. Before being a game designer, I was on the game analysis team for League for 5 years, formerly known as the playtest team. So I've been at Riot for almost 7 years now. I swapped to game design about 1.5 years ago, worked on some Summoner's Rift stuff before starting Arena this year, which has been a really fun project.
Okay. So the idea of Arena, like, where does that even... Is that just like a concept? You guys are in the round table and then boom, or what?
Well, I wasn't involved with the original concepting of it. I was more assigned to it to work on the augments once we had already come up with the concept. But in general, we hadn't done any new game modes in quite some time, and we kind of wanted to do something new players wouldn't be expecting. And I think the core idea of Arena for me is about kind of having ease of access to kind of a lot of the fun of champion combat in League of Legends. Summoner's Rift is an awesome game, but there's a lot of nuance and intricacies, and you have to go through laning phase, and not everyone enjoys that. Arena is just kind of like, hey, pick whatever champion you want and just kind of fight and brawl people. And that like ease of accessibility is, I think, really appealing to a lot of people. And then we also get to kind of use things like augments to kind of add variance to that experience, because if it was just straight up 2v2s with SR rule set, basically, I think it would get repetitive pretty fast. You'd feel like, oh, this matchup is doomed, I can't win, etc. And the game-to-game experience wouldn't be very different. So we get to kind of add cool variant stuff like augments to kind of amp your fantasy even higher and make it more replayable.
Yeah, so on the first Arena, your guys is like the return. I mean, I don't know about like Riot's opinion or like your department's opinion, but it was really good. Like, everyone loved Arena when it came out.
Yeah, we were very happy with the reception. It performed. Yeah, I can't share exact details, but it performed very, very well, and we definitely want to keep investing in it. We very much want the game mode to be a permanent thing, and we're investing to try and make that the case. If it performs well enough, then
yeah,
we'll do it. So.
That kind of went into my next question. Then was, do you think that it's going to be a permanent mode? I mean, that's like that's everyone's question. Is this mode going to just disappear? Is it going to come back?
Yeah, I can't say for sure right now. For this run, it's going to go away after the one patch. It's going to be a long patch because it's over the winter break. So I believe it's going to be on live for 4 weeks. We're going to take it down again and then make some more adjustments and improvements. So the goal, like I said, is for it to become permanent. We didn't want to just sit on it forever. We wanted to get the new mode out for summer this year for the first release, and then we didn't want to just sit behind the scenes without anyone being able to play it for a whole year while we added a bunch of improvements. So we're trying to do a couple different releases so we can kind of get feedback and show the improvement along the way. Also because it's just it's just fun right now, even if we're not ready to have it to commit to it being fully permanent yet. It's still a fun mode that a lot of people enjoy playing, so why not let people play it while we're working on it to some degree? So
yeah, of course, we
can't do that permanently because it's just a lot of upkeep, but yeah, by doing this segmented release, hopefully people can get some exposure to these changes we've made, give us some feedback there, and we can do some more improvements for the next round, and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, so to get back to that, you talked about it being like competitive a little bit. Do you think that the mode, like, I mean, this is like the telltale, this is like the argument of all time. Like, is it a fun game mode or is it competitive? I mean, that's like me, like I take it competitive, but I have so many friends who they're just like, yeah, I'll go play some arena, whatever. Like that's it. So
Yeah, I mean, it's meant to be somewhere in between. Like, if you look at the permanent modes we have right now, right, there's SR, which is like a really competitive mode, and there's ARAM, which is like a very casual mode.
yeah,
So, Arena is meant to be more kind of in between to fill this niche of like the people who want something not as stressful as SR, but want something that feels a little more, strategic and try hard than ARAM, and like you have more kind of individual player agency than an ARAM, right?
yeah,
Um,
for sure.
so, I mean, there's also the variance aspect, right? Some people find that a turn off for competitive things, some don't, right? Like, there are plenty of competitive games with a lot of variance, like TFT poker, whatever. There's a lot of skill to adapting to the variance, but there are definitely some games where your opponent just high rolls and you can't really do much, right? So
Yeah, and that does happen, but at the same time, like there's almost always things you can do. But like
right.
if you're playing like a mirror matchup, which I think is actually removed, correct, from the new, you can't mirror matchup anymore.
It's not
right?
removed. It should be rarer though, because the way the new draft structure works is there's bans at the beginning just like before, but
Yeah,
every team picks one champion all at once instead of every team picking both champions all at once. So it's like
yeah.
every team has a first pick and a second pick. So
So
amongst
there
that
can only be
first
a mirror
pick, there
matchup on the
could
first
be,
pick.
or the second pick, yes. But
Okay.
you cannot pick anything in the second pick that was picked in the first pick.
Okay.
So it kind of removes a lot of that, kind of half of the opportunities for the mirror match. But yeah, if theoretically there was like, oh, X champion is just clearly the best champion and doesn't get banned for whatever reason, everyone could first pick it,
Okay.
But,
yeah.
yeah, it should
I
happen
mean,
less often.
that's pretty unique. Definitely the new the new arena. Actually, well, one more question for the old one. So when you guys were doing updates, first of all, your guys' patches are like on point. Like you guys are making patches like every other day, hot fixing, like regular. I've played League for a long time, and I don't think League has ever patched like that before. In my opinion, like regular SR, but arena patches are like crazy because they're like, they're
Yeah.
snappy.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean that was mostly an artifact of the first release. We really wanted the game experience to be good, and there's so much different from Arena compared to SR. Like if you consider SR the baseline that the game has been balanced around, and all the champions have been balanced around, right? It's like you go from 5 champions on a team to 2 champions.
Yeah.
Both that changes like the shape of what champions are good, right? Like pure team fighters are going to be worse, obviously, right?
Yeah.
And also like the actual impact of each champion's power gets amplified, right, by like 2.5x, right, because you are 50% of the team instead of being 20% of the team. So in order for us to like have the same like kind of balance or win rate bandwidths that you would see in SR, we need to basically be like 2.5 times as precise as with our champion balance, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, there was just a lot of outliers, which was kind of unavoidable, right? And we wanted the mode to be fair, so it's kind of like, yeah, we want to react really fast and address a lot of this stuff, and I push for that as well.
Yeah, I mean,
Like
it's
I said,
also
I was on the game analysis team for 5 years before, so
yeah,
I care a lot about the competitive aspect and the balance of things. So
yeah. I was just gonna say it's also like, do you have more control? Because I feel like the actual balance team doesn't have as much control
for sure.
as like everyone else thinks they do. I
it's not necessarily control.
True,
it's more just like there's just a lot of you have to be careful when making changes. There's every change has to be tested by QA, to make sure it's not introducing bugs, etc. There's just a lot of like bandwidth constraints, so it doesn't make sense to kind of go as hard as we did all the time. It's just a lot of extra work for a lot of people. But since it was the first release and this is the first mode we've done in a long time, we were willing to do that. And I think it was great to do that. For this release, we're not going to be able to do that in terms of like live balance for a couple of reasons. One, I'm personally going to be going on vacation. There will be some other people taking over balance for me, but I won't be there to react on live. But the bigger reason is that it's going to be over one patch, so everything will have to be a micro patch, which is just more costly to do than last run. We had like 3 patches where we could do larger balance changes regularly. So we'll do a couple micro patches most likely, but we won't be able to be as kind of crazy and snappy, fast reactive as we were for version 1. I'm trying to do a lot of balancing on PBE ahead of time, to get it in a good state. And I don't know if you've seen the patch. I basically like linked patch notes. There will be full patch notes for 13.24, but I linked
Yeah.
like a tentative
Yeah.
patch notes. There are a lot of changes we did ahead of time in this case, so yeah.
And you also have a
there won't be too
direction
much
now
about
because
that.
you had Arena before. Before, like
Correct.
the first rendition, you have no idea, right? Like you probably don't know what's going to be meta. You would just assume double bruiser fighter is just automatically OP. That's what you would assume.
Yeah, well, we kind of yes and no. We observed the double bruiser fighter stuff being OP early in testing, so like
Yeah.
even for version 1, we put in things to try and combat that.
Yeah.
Like that's part of why the plants are as powerful as they are and are kind of like slanted towards range champions, right? It's like a way to help get the range champions some power there. And also there was just other systems like for version 1, we couldn't predict everything ahead of time, but we could predict the general pattern. So it's like I knew assassins were going to be bad.
Yeah.
So like in version 1, you probably remember all the lethality items were like giga buffed.
Yeah,
and it's just
of course.
It's like
yeah.
that was kind of the only way I could make them compete without just going in and changing each individual champion. And we didn't have the bandwidth to change every individual champion at the time.
Yeah.
But since we had a couple months between the releases, in this case, like I mentioned, there's a lot of changes. A lot of the stuff I did was kind of going in and actually just changing the individual champions, so I don't have to push the systems to make up for it. So in this release, the lethality items will not be as OP because I nerfed them and just buffed the lethality champions.
Yeah, which is definitely healthier for the game.
Yeah.
So did you guys predict the 80 carry meta being strong? Because I feel like nobody was doing that until like a couple of like higher elo SR players started playing like ADC support. Did you guys see that in the future or no?
Yes and no. I think. Well, one, it's always like a tough thing for MMR balance because in general, like I think the marksman comps are a lot stronger in high MMR than they are in low MMR.
Yeah.
So we kind of have to like keep that into account. Also, if you remember, like back to PBE, like the first release, even on live, the first release, right? Like the like big OP frustration complaints were like, oh, it's like Zyra, Heimerdinger, and Shaco and stuff, right? It's like these like.
I think. Do you think that was every rank? Do you think that was every rank, or do you think that was like specific to low MMR?
I don't think those were the most OP champions. Those were just like the most played and the most frustrating champions.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely.
So they kind of like made up a lot of the meta, and since we want this to be a mode people are excited to play, we didn't want 50% ban rate Shaco or whatever. So that was kind of like the first priority to address. Yeah. But then kind of to get back to your point of the ADC enchanter stuff, I definitely saw it coming to some degree. It's just like it was kind of a little lower on the priority list. I think one of the bigger mistakes I made for the release of V1 was not nerfing Redemption before it.
Redemption, all the support items, right? Wasn't it? It was Redemption.
Yeah, it was just like Redemption and Moonstone were really OP, right? And
yes, the Moonstone shielding. Oh my god.
Yeah, that kind of like happened because, so Moonstone I had to re-script. I had to like make a new item, kind of basically, right? Because it had been reworked as part of the mid-season for season 13, right? They changed Moonstone from being the like passive heal while you're in combat to being the chain heal and shields.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, how do I make this item work in arena? You don't have, because in SR it won't chain to yourself. So if we did it in arena, it's like, okay, this doesn't actually do anything. You use it on your ally and then it doesn't chain because it won't chain to yourself. So I was like, okay, I need to actually make this like chain to yourself, or if you cast on yourself, chain to your ally. That's like the way to make it work in arena, or I just have to disable the item, right? And I didn't want to disable the item because it's a cool heal and shield fantasy item, right? Which is like
for sure
part of the core to the enchanter fantasy. And if I didn't disable it, they'd only have 2 mythics left. So I made it work like fairly late in the PBE cycle. So there was definitely some amount of like just lag on people like figuring out the good builds with it.
Yeah.
And I kind of like had identified that enchanters for most players were pretty weak, so a couple of their items were really pushed, including Redemption.
Yeah, I mean, people, that's the thing is like I think the lower you go, the easier, like as far as MMR, like you're going lower base MMR, the trap comps are really strong, the double bruises are really strong, but in the new arena, that's not necessarily true. New arena is actually very different, and the augments have changed a lot, which has kind of like shaped the new direction of the game. So like You have any foresight on like what the game's gonna look like for this new patch that's coming out?
Yeah, well, kind of to your point, I really with this version, this release of Arena, we really wanted on the balance standpoint for one more just more champions to be viable. So less champions kind of at the bottom of the table where there's less than 40% win rate or whatever. Tried to bring a lot of those champions up so there's just more champion diversity. But also I wanted like the top of the meta to be different than version 1, and I wanted those frustrating things not to be the most popular things again. So I didn't want it to be hey, 1.5 comes out and it's just Heimerdinger Shaco again. I want the top of the meta to be something else, at least they're the most popular as well. So yeah, it's pretty meaningfully different, I think. Those champions that were frustrating, we kind of just left in like a average or slightly weak state so that they're not overbearing in the meta. And I tried pretty consciously to make it so the top of the meta is different than V1. So like I mentioned, I went through and buffed a lot of the assassin champions. Pike is one of the strongest champions on PBE right now. That was not really the case in V1. He was just like okay in V1.
He's fun.
Yeah, he was fun, but yeah, in terms of power, he's just okay. So yeah, I think the current meta. I mean, as we're speaking, this is Monday. We have 2 days to do balance changes basically before our branch cut this Wednesday for things going live. So I'm going to do some changes. So this is subject to change. But as I'm speaking right now, it's like the current meta is, I think, like assassin and marksman are the strongest. Mages are also pretty strong. So it's like pretty different meta, I would say, from V1. I mean, marksmen were strong in V1 as well, but assassins I think are significantly stronger currently than they were in V1. And tanks are kind of struggling a little bit, so we'll have to see. One of the problems with V1 was that it was kind of for a number of reasons, it was very death touchy, like very high on burst damage later in the game.
Yeah.
One of the big reasons for that was that I pushed the lethality items like we talked about, and that's just like, yeah, people are buying 4 really overtuned lethality items that are going to one-shot people. So I think that's less true in V1.5 as well, which is great. But if the meta is going to be assassin marksman, those are going to be pretty quick games, right? So I want to. So
this is 1.5. Is that what you're saying?
Sorry, yeah, that's how we refer to it internally.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so not Arena 2. Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
Do we think that the damage currently, like the damage output of like champions, is like too high, and do you think it will be toned down if you think it's too high?
Well, that's kind of what I was just getting to. Yeah, I think it was definitely too high as you scaled in version 1. So for this release, we're trying to tone it down a little bit.
Okay.
And it's tough though. It's like all the balance problems of SR amplified again because your champion is more impactful, and because we have all these additional variants of augments, and also the high end is higher, right? It's like if you took you take a 6-item build in SR and then you add a prismatic augment, right? It's like, yeah, the high end of the damage builds is just going to be a lot higher damage than SR, and that's inherent to the mode. That's part of the appeal of the mode, right? So
of course, yeah.
It's definitely hard to balance nailing having fun and cool stuff, and sometimes there's just going to be moments where you feel like that's crazy damage, that's bullshit, and that's unacceptable. So yeah, I want the damage to be lower than version 1, but how much is kind of probably going to depend on the meta. I think I've definitely gotten it lower than version 1 though. I mean, mostly
it is, yeah,
mostly because of, like I said, the lethality stuff, and also I just like made champions tankier later in the game. Like you have more health and more resistances compared to version 1. So
yeah. All right, so we got to talk about it. The revive system.
Yeah.
Okay, the revive system is really cool, but Matt, we can't CC them. We can't stop them from reviving. Do you think that will ever change?
I mean, so the revive mechanic is probably like the most the highest risk mechanic we're adding in here, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's definitely like subject to change for the future. It's not going to change for this release, I would say.
Okay.
But we're gathering data for the future off this.
Yeah.
For whether mechanic does good things, whether players like it, what the correct counterplay is, etc. I personally like the version we have in right now. I think adding these kind of like counterplay mechanics probably adds more problems than they solve. Makes it feel kind of more skewed than it needs to be.
Yeah.
So in
Because I
general,
know the most frustrating thing in the current one, or at least you'll be like, you're like, I'm CCing this guy. Shouldn't the res stop? Or like, they'll just be playing like a tank, and you're like, okay,
yeah,
well, I guess this guy just gets to res his teammate for free. So it's
yeah.
almost like, is
Well,
it worth? Is it like maybe it's a strategy to like die first? You know what I mean?
right. Yeah, that is. I think that's the one major downside to the system for me right now is I think there are times, especially in early rounds, where it's correct to just to die rather than like survive at 1 HP to get your revive timer ticking faster. That's
Yeah.
not ideal. But yeah, to the point of like the counterplay stuff, like the CC, like yeah, tanks, as you mentioned, like are already probably the best mechanic, the team best class at using the revive, right? They
Yeah.
can sit in the circle and not die. It's hard to kill them before they can revive their teammate. If you could CC and cancel it, that would be even better for tanks, right? It's like tanks
Yeah.
have a
Of
lot of
course.
CC,
Of
right?
course. Yeah.
Similarly for like if you could stand on the circle, right? That would also make it really good. Like if standing on the circle prevented the enemy from reviving, that would also make it really
Like
good
King
for
of the
tanks,
Hill.
right?
Yeah. Like King of
Yeah,
the Hill.
exactly. And that would make it so like
Tanks
yeah,
to
it
be a
wouldn't even
little
be
strong.
worth it wouldn't even be worth playing for the revive most of the time in the 1v2, right? If they can just
Yeah.
stand on it, they can just wait for the circle to close. It's like, what do you do, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
So yeah, I think the lack of counterplay is correct to have it actually be like accessible for most classes.
Okay. There's so many, like when we first got into arena and because we were in a call with like maybe 15 people like trying out the new arena, doing a custom game, and
Yep.
we're all just laughing because everyone is playing tank support and AD carry, and then you just have like two tanks bashing each other's head in on a revive, like rezzing people. So that is really funny. The new portal system, man, I like the new portal system. Everyone else complains about it, but man, I think it's so good because that's like the biggest thing to arena is like being aware of like plant timers, being aware of the map hazard or whatever, and
Yeah.
having the understanding of like, okay, this portal resets in 5 seconds, like I can use this to escape or whatever else. It's just like, I like the portal, and do you guys think that you're gonna keep it in or change it or what?
I mean, it's the same as the revives. I think it's subject to change, but yeah, I think in general, I love the hex gates as well. I'm a big fan, so I'd be pretty surprised if we cut them personally. I think the impetus for adding them was primarily that one of the kind of weakest classes in version 1 was poke champions. It's like, yeah, the circle kind of closes in. You can't really run forever.
Yeah.
So like having a way to actually like kind of disengage and get more time to poke built into the mode, I think is really good for making those champions feel viable. Because the other way, if that didn't exist, basically the way it would make them viable is like, hey, they just one shot you, right? It's like
Of course.
Zareth hits you and you just die.
Yeah.
So like letting them actually like kite you more and get more chance to poke, lets them be viable without causing really bad game health issues. So I think it's a great mechanic on that front, and I also just think it's fun to play with, right? Like you said.
Yeah,
like
the gates are unique, like for sure unique.
Just go across the map and like grab plants, etc. I think it also this was not intended, but we discovered really quickly in testing once we had the revive and the hex gates in that they play really well together.
Yeah.
Because like the revive kind of creates a scenario where it's like, okay, do you want to defend the circle? If you do, then you're giving up so like say one team kills someone on the others, but so it's a 2v1 situation, right?
Yeah.
The 2 then has a situation where if the 1 kind of runs away to try and stall for the circle, right? They're in a situation where it's like, okay, if we want to try and defend the circle, then that means one of our people is staying back in the circle, so we're kind of giving up our 2v1 to let you 1v1 to like defend the circle, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But if we both commit hard to 2v1 you, then you can actually take the hex gate and go back to the circle a lot of the time, right?
Yeah,
so
and
like,
that's the best part about it is that you can stall for the circle. They work hand in hand. So
I think they creates a lot of like outplay potential and like high tension moments. That's why I actually like the revive mechanic as well. Is it's just like it creates a lot more moments where there's like this high tension. Oh, is he going to get the revive off? And then when the person revives, they're at half health, so it's like also a high tension combat, right?
Yeah.
There's kind of like a lot more moments for outplays that I really enjoy about it. I think the biggest risk with the hex gates, the portals, is that they're definitely really powerful if you just want to play like a stalling strategy to like win with the circle of fire through stuff like Zac passive or nesting doll or whatever.
Yeah.
that's definitely something on my radar. I don't have a great solve for it right now. Hopefully, it isn't like too prevalent.
I'll be honest. Alistar was so broken in the last Arena One,
Yeah.
and people are not playing it in Arena 1.5. But I, with my friend, we have queued up maybe 15 games and played Gragas Alistar, and it is still really, really strong. I don't know why people just stop playing it, but it is still really good. So do you think
Alistar
those bounce house comps are still good or no?
I think they're fine, and I think if you are playing at like challenger level and like really sweaty optimizing, I think they're probably pretty good.
Yeah.
I think if you're just like an average player just playing Alistar, it's not that good.
Yeah.
Alistar is like in that camp of kind of like I was saying for V1, the Heimerdinger Shaco champions who like we kind of like left a little underpowered for the average player because they're frustrating to play against.
Yeah, that champion last arena, not fun.
Yeah.
Same with Poppy. Oh my, the Poppy is not. It's not real. The Poppy is crazy. I haven't seen anyone play I haven't seen anyone play Poppy on the new arena though.
Yeah, I definitely see them still, but it's a lot less prevalent than it was in V1, which
okay.
I'm happy with. Yeah.
So
also, I mean, in V1, Poppy was also messed up because you could one-shot people with lethality builds, and
that was exactly my point. That was exactly my point. Is that you said you nerfed down the lethality items, so Poppy is now just like she can't be as crazy as she was. You know?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's really good to hear. So the new augments are, you guys like changed a lot with the new augments.
Yeah.
Like the attack depth going from 40 to 60, I believe it was.
It was 50 for some of version 1. Yeah. It got
was it? 50? Okay. Yeah. And then now it's 60, right?
Yeah.
Did you guys leave in the Gwynsiu's nerfs, or did you guys nerf it more, or did you buff it, or from
I think it's
from
nerfed
one?
A little more, if I remember.
Oh, okay. Because I remember
but
Kaisa,
in general,
Vayne,
we left
Twitch.
in the balance changes from the first version, with the exception of the lethality items. Well,
Okay.
with the exception of the lethality items and some other ones, like it was the same thing for the poke champions, right? Like because they were bad, I giga buffed
the items,
Horizon Focus, and Crowd and stuff. So those are like pulled back because I just buffed the champions and stuff.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, to be honest, like maybe it's needed, but hopefully, right now it seems like you can kind of play anything and get first place. You don't need to play
That's
like a
the
specific
dream.
comp. Yeah, that is the dream.
Yep.
You can play anything and get first place. So.
Yeah, I'm pretty optimistic about it. There's, like I mentioned, we're kind of limited on terms of like bandwidth. You can't. I think the count of like individual champions that have changed for this release is like 70 or 80. I don't know exactly, but it's like actually half the roster.
Wow, that's a lot of champions.
Yeah, and there are still more I'd love to do, to be honest, but I have to be respectful of QA. So
yeah, so they have to try out every single champion that you change.
Yeah, I mean they just have to make sure that there aren't bugs introduced, right? That like I say I want to do nerf by this number, I have to make sure that's the number that actually was like implemented and is working correctly. Right? If I miss a decimal, then something might one-shot you, right? Like instead of being 10% or 100%, right?
Yeah, unfortunate.
Yeah, and then on top of that, it's just like in order to do one of the reasons we could do all these champion balance changes for this release and not the first release is just the way things are implemented. So basically, there's like in the way the files are actually set up, there's kind of two different ways to implement values for champions for abilities. One of them is like an older way and one of them is a newer way, and only if we use the newer way could we do arena specific balance changes, right?
Okay.
So like the newer way says, hey, this is the default value, but if it's arena, use this value instead.
Okay, I see.
So if a champion was using the older values, I just couldn't change that for version 1.
Okay, that makes sense.
But for this release, I went through and just actually had to, so in those cases, if I wanted to change it, if I said, hey, okay, I want to change this thing about the champion, because I think that's the best health, like the best, the coolest thing for arena, the best, most healthy thing for arena, I have to actually go and rescript this ability and say, in every place where it's calling for this old value, I have to make sure that it's calling for this new value instead. And if I screw up, then it'll bug the champion for SR and everything, right? So, so yeah, there was just, like I said, as part of the 70-80 changes, probably maybe like 50 of those I had to rescript something on the champion, right? So that's a lot of potential bugs introduced. So yeah, it was a lot of work for QA. So
So basically, they hate you, is what you're trying to say.
Hopefully
Man.
not, but
Yeah,
I
that's
think
funny.
to get back to your point of like you can play anything and win. I think it was worth it. I think we're pretty close to there. I'm hoping to do a few last balance changes on PBE here, and
Yeah.
it'll be in a great spot.
Yeah. There's one more question that I have off the top of my head is, do you think there will be an ability to play custom games or select custom augments for theory testing or for content creators or other reasons?
We don't have that right now. Definitely something we consider doing in the future. Yeah, like a practice tool. I don't know. If it became a permanent mode, then that's something we could consider.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure. For custom games, like, I mean, yeah, you can queue with 8 people now, at least, so there's that. But yeah, we don't have any practice tool type stuff.
Does that count towards ranked, the queuing with 8 people?
No, it does not.
It does not? Okay. Yeah, that's what I figured. So yeah, do you have anything? I mean, like, these are just the questions I had written down. Do you have anything else that you want to talk about as far as the Arena 1.5?
No, I think we covered pretty much everything I wanted to go over. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, so who do you think is going to be rank 1 when the Arena comes out?
I don't know. I mean, I've watched quite a few of the Halo streamers. I watched a little bit of your stuff. I watched some of Pants stuff. I watched some of Canyon stuff. I don't know. I guess Blazol is playing a lot now too. He's a former pro player.
Nidhogg.
And Nidhogg, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, Nidhogg does some cool videos too. So I don't know.
Could be fun.
Probably whoever identifies the OP stuff quicker. I guess to your question of like, was there anything else I wanted to mention? One thing we didn't touch on was actually like augment balance a lot.
Yeah, I mean, you guys do great at that, in my opinion, at least. The augment balance has always been really good, but I mean, go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think it's in our favor as well that we did the thing where we hid the augment data. Like, there's no public augment data, right? So you wouldn't actually know if something is really overpowered or underpowered unless it's obvious, right? So yeah, there's definitely some challenges there. I think one of the things, the biggest discrepancies between our data and like player perception right now is like any augment that scales a lot, like the permanent stackers, like Phenomenal Evil or Wisdom
you guys changed Phenomenal Evil,
Killer, or all the new curse augments, right? Basically, all of those augments, I think, are if you were to just look at the data with no context, they look way worse than players think they are.
Yeah.
But it's just there's just a lot of weird kind of intricacies to those, because we want them to feel we set them up so you can only get them in like first or second augment, generally speaking, because you get the infinite stacking thing, third augment, you get eliminated in the next round. That feels pretty shitty. So the kind of there's those two states of getting them first or second, and we generally want we want it to be a high roll to get them first, right? There should be a difference,
of course.
So
but the fact that you guys like, this is the thing I feel like I don't see in regular League of Legends patches. You guys are thinking ahead. We probably don't want Phenomenal Evil at, we don't want to start stacking this as second or third augment or something crazy. So we give you 60 AP to start because there's another augment that gives like 60 AP, right? Another augment that gives flat AP.
Correct. Yeah, 70. Yeah. I think, I mean, in defense of the Summoner's Rift people, I used to be on the Summoner's Rift team as well. I think they do think ahead. It's just we have a lot harder. Well, we just have a lot more obvious problems to solve. Like, Summoner's Rift is really refined. It's been a game for
a long
13
time.
years
Yeah,
now.
A long time. Yeah.
Whereas with us, it's like, hey, there's this new stuff. This is obviously off because, again, Summoner's Rift is kind of the baseline. So kind of need to solve this.
Also, you guys have to worry about pro play and stuff too. I guess I didn't really take that into account. Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, the augment balance, like, maybe I'm the only one who thinks this, I have no clue, but in Arena 1, really good. In Arena 1.5, I think I've ran almost every augment. The only augment I was a little confused on is Spellwake. It's like, it's I mean, you made the augment.
I
How
didn't do
come,
all the
like,
augments for
Kaisa
version
W?
for this release actually. I only did.
Oh,
like,
you did.
a
Oh,
few
you
of them
didn't.
for this
Okay.
one. I did all the augments for the first release. Yeah.
Okay. So you've used Spell Wake before, right?
Yeah. I know them all. Yeah, and I am balancing them all. So yes, I definitely am familiar.
Okay, so if I, what is the reason for if I cast like Kaisa W, Spell Wake is not working? Is it only targeted spells?
If it is not working on Kaisa W, I'd consider that a bug.
Oh, really? Okay, so it should be intended then.
Yeah, it's supposed to work on just like every active spell, but only once per cast. So like
once per cast.
If you hit with brand Q or whatever, it's not going to trigger on every tick of passive. But
of course.
Once. Yeah.
Okay, because there's like a couple champions. I just wondered like, oh, maybe it's only like targeted spells. But I mean, I love the concept of Spellwake. It's like everyone thought Earthwake was so bad, and then near the end of Arena, everyone's like, "Bro, this is so broken." Callista Earthwake, Maokai Earthwake.
Yeah.
So Earthwake, very good. I love that. I love that augment.
Thank you. Yeah. That was that was one of the last ones I came up with for the first release. Actually, it was kind of like we were getting near the end of like augments blocking, and I kind of looked across all the classes. I was like, man, I don't really have a really cool like assassin prismatic augment, so kind of brainstormed and came up with Earthwake. That's my favorite one.
It's very
Earthwake
unique.
and Chauffeur are probably my two favorites.
Oh, I am a Chauffeur legend, bro. That is my favorite augment in the entire game. all of my best videos on YouTube are Chauffeur videos. I swear. Did you?
Chauffeur's even like kind of sicker within this release because now you can like both take the Hex Gate.
Yeah.
Like drag them with you.
Yeah.
So it's pretty sick.
Okay, so my last question then, because we brought up Chauffeur, is
okay,
so I feel like I kind of was like a revolutionary with the 80 carry and fast support Chauffeur. I don't think anybody was ever doing that. I made like the first video that I follow all the content creators, and nobody ever made a video like that. Did you foresee that or no?
Not the specific like stacking move speed, I guess, necessarily.
Like the Kog'Maw flying around at like 1900 movement speed.
It's definitely something I considered, but I didn't. It wasn't like jumping out as like the clear, obvious, like best use case for Chauffeur. There's actually, I will say, I'm not gonna say what it is, but there was. So we have our game analysis team, right, which is a team I used to be on, kind of like playtest team, high elo players giving feedback on stuff, and there was an abuse case for Chauffeur they were concerned about that I think could still happen, but I haven't seen players really doing so. And it's kind of in a similar vein, so I'm hoping.
I hope it's not a Mordekaiser.
I don't want to speak it into existence.
Okay.
But,
Okay. All right. I won't push on that. Hey man, well, thank you so much for talking to me and being able to make this video happen. I really appreciate it. Is there any shout outs or anything you want to give?
No, just thanks for having me. This is a fun conversation. I enjoy talking about Arena, talking about the game. And thanks for playing a bunch. We're trying to make a really cool mode that people love. Hopefully, we're getting closer and closer to what an awesome permanent version would look like.
Yeah, awesome.